An onslaught of new tech is heading our way after Mobile World Congress brings some big reveals. Samsung's new Ring could be coming sooner than we think. Microsoft is hoping to finally fix their mess of upscaling games. Layoffs continue to impact the gaming world in depressing ways. Apple putting the brakes on its electric car project. A new Pokémon announced, but not for this year. And a big report on Nintendo's next big thing. This and a whole lot more taking over the headlines the past 7 days. I'm Jason Griwa, and this is The Fresh Wire. Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to, that's right, the big 3-0, episode 30 of The Fresh Wire. As I'm recording this, it is 10:11 p.m., March 1st, 2024. Hope everyone had a nice, jolly old February. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, evening, day or night, wherever you are, wherever you live. Thanks again. So we're just going to jump right in because quite a lot actually did happen in the past few days thanks to a huge event that just finished in the past few days in Barcelona. It's the Mobile World Congress for 2024. A big opportunity, the trade show, billing itself as, quote, the largest and most influential event for the connectivity ecosystem. Tens of thousands of attendees stopping by, taking a look at some very big announcements across the globe. Some big ones, including the new OnePlus Watch 2, which some reviewers say is a pretty big upgrade over the original OnePlus Watch. Actually could shake things up for mobile smartwatches, at least for Android users. Apple, well, you got the Apple Watch, and that's it. Some very ambitious concepts showing foldable, bending smartphones, bending it back rather than forward, like the Z Flip, the Galaxy Z Flip, or the Z Fold. AI PCs being talked about, Intel saying they plan to have 100 million AI PCs by next year, whatever AI PCs really mean. More of a look on the Humane AI pin, which is very strange in of itself. Smart glasses were shown off. Some changes are coming to Wear OS, which power a lot of Android smartwatches. Even some electric cars were shown off. Xiaomi's SU7 electric car. Now, they make some very nice smartphones that are kind of niche because they're not, I guess, as well known of a brand as Samsung or Apple or Google is, but they've got some ambition, and every time I see reviews for their smartphones, it actually looks pretty good. And they showed off an EV that can do apparently 0 to 100 kilometers an hour kilometers in 2.78 seconds. All right, pretty cool. Well, we'll see about that. Samsung, like I said, showing off the very cool Galaxy Ring, which is pretty cool. It says 5 to 9 days of battery life, and it's sort of ambitious. I think I've read somewhere it's going to be part of an ecosystem rather than, something you really should use on its own, which for a lot of smartphone owners or smartwatch owners, including myself with the lovely Galaxy Watch 6 that I really do like. I come off from the Galaxy Watch 4, which I also liked for the full 2+ years I owned it. Well, now there's going to be the Galaxy Ring, and it's expected to arrive later this year, showing it's part of its company's vision for the future of ambient sensing, where you can really get more info out of your health and lifestyle rather than just having a smartwatch and a smartphone. The Ring, I guess, will go even further. It's going to come in a few colors, different sizes depending on your finger size. I don't think price was revealed, so that's still out. I think the Aura Ring is around $300 or so. It's like the only real competitor I can think of that I see a lot of it being compared to. But yeah, depending on how much more information you get using the Galaxy Ring compared to not, could be something I could check out, but of course we'll have to wait and see when it arrives later this year. Lenovo, makers of a lot of laptops, have been really getting creative. I think they're the ones that recently made a laptop that can fold in half, like a huge folding phone, pretty much. Well, they just showed off a concept device. A year ago, it was a rollable laptop, and now it's even more sci-fi than you can imagine. It's called the ThinkBook Transparent Display Laptop. It's a 17.3-inch notebook with the screen you can see right through. It's a bezel-less micro LED display offering up to 55% transparency when its pixels are set to black and turned off, which is pretty cool from the image that I'm seeing here. As the pixels light up, it becomes less and less see-through, but it has a peak brightness of 1,000 nits. For context, I think the Galaxy S24 smartphone by Samsung is around 2,500, 2,000 or so. But remember, it's a smaller screen, so it's not as difficult to put out light. Very technical know-how, but pretty much 1,000 nits on a laptop is very impressive. What's the price? Well, the better question is, will it ever release? And of course, it's more so like a concept device. A lot of devices at Mobile World Congress are concept devices, so it makes sense. Motorola having a concept phone with a bending display. Some images showing that you can put it around your wrist as probably the most expensive smartwatch you would ever want to have. Infinix having a phone concept with the back of the phone changing color depending on the charging, I guess. A phone with 28,000 milliamp hours built in, sold under the Energizer brand. And yeah, it's when you have 28,000 milliamp hours, which for context, the smartphones have 4,000, maybe 5,000 milliamp hours. So when it's 28,000, that means you can expect multiple days of battery life, but you can also expect multiple times the thickness. And it is a thick one. It's also rugged. IP69 nice rating is better than a lot of smartphones in general. Usually IP68, which means even better water resistance. New smartwatches were shown off. And new tablets. Pretty good stuff. Usually, it's a lot of fluff and no flavor for the Mobile World Congress. It's just a crazy amount of new tech that ends up never being shown off, which is a shame, but not much more you can do with that. And yeah, I mean, that's the big deal with the past few days in terms of tech. But of course, there's always a little extra stuff here or there that I'll get right into. Eufy, which is the brand, a sub-brand under Anker, recently unveiled a brand new 360-degree 4K camera, a security camera that is very impressive. Starting at its price of $250, it is capable enough that it doesn't need to run off of Wi-Fi or power outlets. Hook up to solar panels, and you could even add a SIM card that you could put into it, whether it's your own or one that builds off of what's called Eufy Starlight, and it could automatically hop between three different mobile networks, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, depending on who has the strongest LTE signal. There's a trial amount of data, and then you got to pay, looks like $20 for 2 gigabytes or up to $140 for 24 gigabytes. Crazy amount, but because of how it is, maybe that's just something you want. Reliable, and it's 4K. Looks pretty good. Now, one thing to mention, I wanted to mention this because it looks like a very capable security camera, but you got to remember it's Anker's Eufy brand, the brand that was caught in a huge security camera privacy scandal, eventually admitting its supposedly always encrypted cameras weren't always encrypted. Now, that was a huge deal because they have cameras that you are supposed to run indoors, or at least you can run indoors. This one is an outdoor camera with how capable it is and how it's, you probably want to use solar panels. Makes more sense, but it is something to keep in mind. $250. I don't know. It looks pretty good. If not for the fact that they had that horrible scandal happen to them, this would be a pretty compelling thing. But I did want to mention because security cameras are an important thing that you should always have, at least wherever you can put one, and if you can afford it. Always stick with a good one, even if they might be a little expensive than you would hope for. Something that I wish was more expensive, at least if it meant it was more capable, was Chromecasts with Google TV. Google makes streaming sticks, just as Amazon does, and Apple makes their Apple TV products. But Google specifically has been making very little progress on a new one. Their 4K model, their flagship one, that's like $40 to $50, depending on if there's a sale or not, has released back in 2020, and it's getting old. It's getting a little long in the tooth. They have an HD model that's lower end and even has less RAM, so multitasking isn't as good, but it has newer hardware, so it's more power efficient and has better capability for decoding videos. They're more efficient videos. Again, a lot of technical know-how, but pretty much it's very annoying that there's not really a high-end solution for Android use that is just capable of it all. At least not now. But it looks like that could change. A Chromecast with Google TV has been found in some sort of code for a mobile application that you may use, and this was found out earlier today, actually, by 9to5 Google, and it's actually pretty impressive. It's called, in this code, which again, this could all be speculation, but it's code directly found from apps that, they go take a deep dive into. And apparently, there's a new mystery device called YTD appearing side by side with the current models of the Chromecast with Google TV. 9to5 Google also confirming that the Google Home app that I think they've looked through in a recent update to the Google Home app treats it like existing Chromecast models rather than a Google TV device with an OEM from an OEM that gets treated differently. So they are fairly confident this is a sign that they're preparing to launch a new TV dongle. It comes as a while back, September last year, the 9to5 Google team uncovered a new Chromecast-like remote with a customizable star button in the beta for Android TV 14, which is a basis for what Google Chromecast run off of, implying that they really have been working on this, and you just gotta hope they release something new soon. It's, again, long in the tooth. They got to release something soon because Amazon has been destroying them in terms of performance and capability with their Fire TV sticks. I think the Fire TV stick 4K Max 2nd gen is extraordinarily capable, and it's like $60 or so at full price or something like that. Now, of course, it's Amazon, so not as great with Google integration, which is something I would want and is a deal breaker for me, but that's the only deal breaker. If it had Google integration, like full on, like Play Store and whatnot, like a Chromecast, that would be an incredible. I would have pre-ordered it probably. So, obviously annoying, but not much you can do there. Microsoft has been working with some pretty big companies to improve a key issue that's been going on with Windows and computers as a whole. They've been working with NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel to improve upscaling support in PC games. They're hoping that this new Windows API called DirectSR is the, quote, missing link between games and DLSS, FSR, and XeSS. All three of those, by the way, are upscaling technology capability that the three companies I mentioned, NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel, work to implement into video games on PC so they're able to look nicer at lower resolutions. So here's a more direct quote by Microsoft in a new blog post by program manager Joshua Tucker. Here's the quote. This API enables multi-vendor SR, in brackets super resolution, unbracket, through a common set of inputs and outputs, allowing a single code path to activate a variety of solutions, including NVIDIA DLSS super resolution, AMD Fidelity FX super resolution, and Intel XeSS, unquote. So it seems like rather than working on implementing each technology in a different way, even if some can be open source and others are proprietary, if you wanted to support all three, you had to put in the effort to integrate all three separately. Microsoft seems to be hoping that rather developers will use this DirectSR API to achieve all of that without doing any crazy stuff. Yeah, the blog post comes as a couple of weeks ago, something called an automatic super resolution feature was spotted in a test version of Windows 11, promising to, quote, use AI to make supported games play more smoothly with enhanced details. So rather than a Windows-level alternative to improving the resolution of gaming without actually increasing the resolution, it looks like they're just going to integrate existing super resolution technologies instead. Microsoft says this new API will be available soon via a preview version of its Agility SDK, so I guess something you can utilize to integrate into games that you develop for Windows. They plan to offer a sneak peek of how it can be used during a developer session at the forthcoming Game Developers Conference, which takes place later this month, 21st. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, and I will hope to give an update. What I am not a huge fan of Google doing, although there is precedent for stuff like this happening, is, if you don't know, RCS is a sort of technology that is pretty much the successor to SMS texting. If you have an iPhone and you message with iMessage and you send it with another iPhone that uses iMessage, You're sending through Apple servers. It's end-to-end encrypted. You get all these features. You get the iMessage games, the reactions, the everything, all the goodness that Apple gives you. But if you message an Android user or an iPhone user that doesn't have iMessage properly utilized or turned on, then you send through SMS. Slow, not great. It has to use the mobile network. Videos look really not good. And it's a technology from a few decades ago. Well, RCS is what Google's been trying to integrate into their Android smartphones with their Google Messages app. End-to-end encrypted. You get some extra features, real-time texting indicators, and it's secure. It's literally, I think, meant to be the successor to SMS. Apple has been very lagging behind on supporting it. I think at one point, reportedly, someone asked, "Oh, when are you going to support RCS or iMessage?" And it's like, what do I do? My mom doesn't have an iPhone. And Tim Cook said, buy your mom an iPhone. So that's their stance. But then they changed it with the European Union and I guess the Chinese market, cracking down on regulations. So now RCS will be supported by on iPhones and iOS later this year. Just some context about RCS. So Google's trying to push this new standard, this new technology. And, well, if you have a certain Android device that's rooted, well, you are not able to send or receive them on the platform anyway. So rooted Android devices from like a decade ago, a lot of people rooted their Android devices, including me, getting more accessibility, more customizability, more flexibility out of your Android device, overclocking it, changing how it looks completely. It's equivalent to a degree to jailbreaking an iOS or iPhone device. And a lot of people did it with Android because it was so easy to, and it wasn't the end of the world that you did that. Now it's since become a much more challenging task, and even Samsung, brags about their Knox security with their Android devices. And if you root your phone, that's Samsung, you'll lose, I think, that Knox security permanently. So it's become much less incentivizing, and I have not done it in my past few phones. So now there have been several reports on the Google Messages support page, Reddit, and XDA's web forum suggesting they're not able to send or receive RCS messages if you are rooted. One example from a Reddit user shows the RCS messages will simply vanish after hitting the send button. Several reports also mentioning Google Messages gives no indication that RCS chat was no longer working. This is in comparison to if you try to nowadays use like a banking app, they can detect if your phone is rooted and will not work. But you'll get a pop-up or notification saying you can't use this service because your phone is rooted. This also includes Google Pay or Google Wallet, a way to actually pay for stuff using your phone. They can detect your phone's rooted or device as a security measure, but they'll typically give you a warning. This is not the case with RCS messages. In a statement sent to The Verge, where they asked if Google's blocking rooted device from using RCS, Google Communications Manager Ivy Hunt said the company is, quote, ensuring that message issuing/receiving devices are following the operating measures defined by the RCS standard, unquote. In other words, they are doing it on purpose for rooted devices. Here's more of a quote. Google rotates through many solutions to ensure that Android users can communicate sufficiently, and devices that may not have access to one communication protocol will always have at least one other available. In this case, users that are not able to use RCS still have access to SMS and MMS messaging, unquote. Well, it sure is a good thing that I'm starting to see some carriers no longer provide SMS texting. I think one carrier, it's not in the US, of course, maybe it was like Europe, where they no longer provide SMS messaging because RCS is now available. Or something like that. Maybe I'm getting it mixed up because there is no RCS on iPhone. But you get the point. SMS and MMS have been around for decades. And RCS is what Google's trying to push forward as the next best thing. And even Apple is agreeing, against their will, and are going to support it soon. Now, of course, there is some merit to Google's concern. Of course, to a degree, RCS messaging has faced challenges with tackling spam, forcing Google to, for example, disable its RCS ads feature in India back in 2022. I do remember a lot of talk going on about the craziness involving ads being sent out to phone numbers in India and just crazy amount of ads because I guess RCS is able to do that more efficiently. Very annoying, of course. Very, very annoying. Apple, speaking of Apple with their RCS integration, well, it's not all peachy for them. For a very long time, they have reportedly been working on an electric car, the long rumored Project Titan. Well, not anymore. Apple is reportedly, according to Bloomberg, halted the work on developing an electric car, reportedly announcing the news internally Tuesday, saying many people in the 2,000-person team behind the car, a lot of people, will shift to generative AI efforts instead. From one crazy thing to another, I guess. Apple's efforts to build its own electric car has been rumored for years, with recent reports suggesting Apple was still working on the project. Wired reported earlier this month Apple had driven over 45,000 miles last year using the autonomous driving tech it's developed. Bloomberg saying in January, Apple pushed back the car's expected launch to 2028. So, a little bit of context, rumors about the secretive car project, like I said, nicknamed Project Titan, first emerged in 2015, 9 years ago. Apple hiring a number of key leaders to work on the project, including Tesla's former Autopilot software director and the former CEO of the embattled EV startup Canoo. Now, since then, they've hit a bunch of roadblocks. 2021, they had a departure of the Apple car chief Doug Field, and just 2022, a report from the Information outlining how Apple had struggled with high turnover among staff, constantly changing plans, and internal skepticism. Reports suggested the car was rumored to remain under $100,000, but it wouldn't come with the advanced self-driving capabilities the company initially hoped to have. With the craziness of AI going on, and Tim Cook recently, the CEO of Apple, confirming recently Apple's launching generative AI features, quote, later this year, unquote, it makes sense to move the full 2,000 people to generative AI because it seems like everything Apple makes has to be great from day one, so they can brag and gloat about how they're the first to achieve wireless charging or some BS. And of course, generative AI is a huge thing right now. Since late 2022 with ChatGPT, you got Microsoft jumping in, you got Google jumping in, you got everyone jumping in, you got people running AI chatbots on their own computer. Apple's got to do this correct on day one, reportedly spending millions of dollars every day on training an AI model of its own called Ajax. So it makes a lot of sense. Not the end of the world for crazy electric cars. Sony and Honda earlier teamed up to work on their self-driving electric vehicle dream, opening pre-orders for their Afeela electric cars for next year ahead of a rollout in 2026. So, sucks, but it is what it is. What doesn't suck, at least to me, is Warner Bros. Discovery and Paramount reportedly hitting pause on merger talks. Warner Bros. Discovery reportedly stopped pursuing the acquisition of Paramount, according to sources telling CNBC. Other potential buyers are still reportedly exploring a deal to acquire Paramount, including the production company Skydance Media and media mogul Byron Allen. So, good news. I'm not a fan of mergers. I was misled by how great the Disney and Fox one would be because of the combining of all the Marvel properties, many of them, and now they suck. So, a lot of Nintendo stuff has been happening. There was the Nintendo Direct that everyone anticipated would happen that ended up being a partner showcase, which I think for the first time in several years, there was no Nintendo Direct that actually offered new first-party games or at least updates on first-party titles by Nintendo. Of course, the rumors suggest it could be that they're leading up to something, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. Some pretty nice third-party titles were shown off. A new Super Monkey Ball is always a good thing to see. But the big thing was a few days later, Pokémon Day, where there was a Pokémon Presents. And it was a big deal. Some new updates to Pokemon Go and Pokemon Sleep. Some update to Pokemon Unite, the MOBA that's on smartphones and Nintendo Switch. A revamped version of the trading card game for smartphones. And the next major Pokemon title, Pokemon Legends Z to A. Simultaneously releasing worldwide on Nintendo Switch in 2025. This is a big deal. So it takes place in Lumiose City, where Pokemon X and Y took place. Remember those games? They released back in 2013. The first, I think, big Pokemon title for Nintendo 3DS. Simultaneous global release, which you would hope for nowadays, especially for something like Pokemon. And it is coming to Nintendo Switch, being developed by Game Freak, the ones that usually make the big boy Pokemon titles anyway. No gameplay was shown off, But yeah, huge, huge deal. If you don't remember, Pokemon Legends Arceus was the first truly big attempt at an open world title with the Pokemon brand. So Pokemon Legends Z to A could be a big deal. But it not releasing this year does mean that this year there will not be a huge mainline Pokemon title released. If you don't know, last year, the big release involving Pokemon was new DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which released late 2022. So we're going to have 2 years where there was no big Pokemon title releasing. Now, it could be that Game Freak finally freaked out and accepted people don't want low quality iterations of Pokemon releasing every year or close to every year, and they're finally giving themselves some time to chill out and start with something fresh. Pokemon Legends Arceus was pretty well received, but it had low frame rate issues, and it was a big leap in a different direction that I think a lot of people overall really liked. And Scarlet and Violet, with not a whole lot of time in between, tried to do a little bit with that, but make it a mainline title, and it was to a degree well received, but again, frame rate problems, low resolution. It's hard to push something like the Nintendo Switch, which is why this report suggesting the Switch 2 may have been internally delayed, whatever it ends up being called, I'll call it Nintendo's next console, is a big problem. A lot of reports suggested it was going to release sometime this year, hence why a lot of slowdown has been happening with Nintendo and releasing titles. They had a big push a few months ago with titles like Super Mario RPG. They're releasing a remake, or at least a big remaster for Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door later this year, but not a whole lot seems to be coming this year, at least not yet. Now, of course, it's just February just finished, but the fact that there was no Nintendo Direct with no big title at least shown off or given an update is a big indicator. But now it looks like Nintendo fans might have to wait just a little longer, likely at least a full year. Nintendo's reportedly targeting March 2025 as the release date at the earliest to ensure there will be sufficient stock and games available at launch. That is a shame. It's according to a new report from Nikkei, Nikkei, sorry if I say it wrong, where Nintendo is anticipated to release its successor, quote, as early as March, unquote. This is in line with the rumored first quarter 2025 release date reported by both VGC, Video Game Chronicle, and Eurogamer earlier in February. Previous reports suggested it should have been 2024, but with the aim of having sufficient stock available, avoiding the shortages of previous consoles, not just the original Switch, where I was very lucky to get a midnight launch without pre-ordering, but also what happened with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. They had huge problems with stock, and it took them, I think, overall more than a year until finally it became reliably easy to buy like a PlayStation 5, the more popular console. But those same stock concerns seems to also be to give developers more time to create the new titles as well. A machine translation of the Japanese language report says that Nintendo, quote, prioritized securing initial stock of successor machines and the lineup of popular software at the time of release, unquote. Again, another big title that was announced super long ago, Metroid Prime 4, that was announced E3, remember that? Summer 2017. It was, I think, early 2019, a video update was released saying that development had to start over, and 5 years later, a little more than 5 years now, we have heard absolutely nothing since. So that's fantastic. Companies was also working on, quote, measures to prevent resale, unquote, presumably to try to prevent scalpers from causing further misery. That was also a huge problem with the Nintendo Switch launch, and of course, current generation consoles like the new Xbox and PlayStation 5. Hopefully there are some huge changes, of course, with the whatever Nintendo's next console is, because they need it desperately. That's probably why this actually had a lot of disappointment. It released, the Nintendo Switch, back in early 2017. So now that it's at least a year off, the Nintendo Switch will have been around for 8 full years. For comparison, the PlayStation 5 released 7 years almost to the day after the PlayStation 4. And the PlayStation 4 released, give or take, exactly 7 years after the PS3. What about the PS2? That was 6 years. And after that, 6 years and I think a little less. So this will make it longer of a generation for Nintendo than any PlayStation generation ever existed, unless the PlayStation 5 releases in 2028. And I read somewhere that Sony considers that they're in the latter half of the PlayStation 5's life cycle, which seems to me to suggest it's probably going to be a 2027 launch for the PlayStation 6. Of course, keeping tradition. Also keeping tradition for Sony is layoffs. Tradition as in with the gaming industry, where hundreds of employees across different industries, dare I say over 1,000 at this point, have been laid off in recent months. You could call it changing climate, changing work environment, conditions, inflation, high rates, whatever you want to call it, it's still people losing their jobs. And Sony has laid off 900 PlayStation employees. Also, part of the layoffs, PlayStation London studio is closing down. It's a reduction of its global headcount by around 8%, impacting a variety of PlayStation studios, including Insomniac Games, where they released a statement. After the massively successful Spider-Man 2, they had to release a statement saying, changing climate or whatever, causing layoffs. That's the reward they got for as huge of a game as Spider-Man 2. Also, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games, and Fire Sprite. Yeah, so a big success of the Horizon Zero Dawn, or the Horizon title for PlayStation VR 2. Yeah, that wasn't enough. Or Naughty Dog, where they recently released, I think it was The Last of Us Part 1 on PC. Also, very well received, unless you're a user of the Valve Steam Deck, and also someone that wants high performance on a high-end gaming computer. Well, they've all got affected, putting it in the latest in a wave of gaming and tech industries that have been impacted by layoffs throughout this year so far. So the London studio in the UK, of course, is closing down, and that developed PlayStation VR games. Sony's Fire Sprite studio, as I mentioned, is being impacted. That's the British studio behind PlayStation VR's Horizon Call of the Mountain title, where they revealed last week, by the way, the company Sony, that they're working on PSVR 2 support for PC. I would hope so. Costs about $600. Maybe it's a little less nowadays. The layoffs coming just days after Sony missed a PS5 sales target, leading Sony's stock price to plummet by $10 billion. That's impressive. Analysts pointing toward a near-decade low games margin, which could be why game sales in general are going down, suggesting the cost of making games is eating into Sony's gaming margins. So, huge devastation. It's not just Sony. EA, Electronic Arts, also recently announced layoffs earlier this week, and it led to a very disappointing announcement. Respawn, the makers of Titanfall and the massive success Apex Legends Battle Royale title that I play from time to time, they announced that they laid off a few hundred people themselves and have led to the cancellation, not Respawn, EA in general, but Respawn was working on a first-person shooter using the Star Wars brand that they have now canceled. So good job, EA, and good job, Sony. You just love to make people very angry. Good thing your company does not rely on people buying your titles. I'm being sarcastic. I mentioned before that Funimation, as they were going away after being acquired by Sony and being merged into Crunchyroll, I mentioned in a previous episode that people that had digital libraries of Funimation titles were going to lose them. Well, it looks like there's a chance it doesn't have to be the end of the world. Funimation's solution for wiping out digital libraries could be a good solution if it works. The president of Crunchyroll saying the company is working with customers to provide a, quote, appropriate value, unquote, for titles that will be lost in April. Keep in mind, on April 2nd, it'll be the official Funimation-Crunchyroll merger where people will lose their digital libraries. But they apparently said in a statement sent to The Verge during a podcast, we are working really hard directly with each customer to ensure that they have an appropriate value for what they got in the digital copy initially. As people reach out to us through customer service, we are responding and handling each of those requests as they prefer, unquote. Not entirely sure what is going on there. I didn't use Funimation or Crunchyroll, really, so I won't get any sort of info myself just by being a customer. But for context, the original Funimation offer allowed customers who purchased Funimation discs to redeem a code for a digital copy accessible via Digital Rights Locker, similar to Movies Anywhere, where you buy something, you redeem it through Movies Anywhere, and as the name suggests, you get access to that movie on a range of different sources, like iTunes, Google Play, some other third thing. In 2017, Sony acquired Funimation for $148 million. It was followed up by an over $1 billion acquisition of Crunchyroll from AT&T, completed in 2021. So consolidation made sense, but not to the merger came with the news Funimation streaming service would be shutting down, taking users' digital copy libraries with it. Despite Funimation's website still promising digital copies would be available to stream, quote, forever, unquote. Subject, of course, to a terms of use agreement most probably do not read, including me, because I do not have Funimation content. And yeah, it'll be very interesting what happens if there is going to be some sort of big update to help people out as they merge. I don't know. I do not know. All right, nearing the end of the podcast. Of course, I always want to end things off with VR and then futurology. And it's not great. It's all in on Meta. First, I'm going to start off with a notice. If you have a MetaQuest headset and you still have used an Oculus account, or I guess an Oculus Quest, it's very old, Meta says they're deleting all Oculus accounts at the end of March, specifically March 29th. If you don't migrate over to a Meta account or something that utilizes, I guess, Facebook tech or just a Meta account, you'll lose everything, all of your games purchases and store credits. Now, for context, they emailed people regarding their Oculus account and the need to migrate over to a Meta account back in October 31st, Halloween 2022. And they're now sending out emails, including to people that might not need to get this email. For example, if you have a Meta account, some have been receiving this email as well. I did not personally. Well, now it's saying the Oculus account is scheduled for deletion March 29th, and everything will go away. Your apps and in-app purchases, existing App Store credits, your achievements, friend lists, and any content you created with your Oculus account, unless, of course, you migrated over to an account. So definitely head on over to wherever you have to, open up your headset, and see if any pop-ups pop up or anything. Make sure it's up to date, of course. I always recommend that. And, make sure it's not a Meta account. I did not have an Oculus account because I think these were meant for people that had the Oculus Quest before Facebook, now Meta, mandated you had to have a Facebook or Meta account to utilize or a brand new headset. The Meta Quest 2, as they made it much cheaper than the Oculus Quest before it, at the time called the Oculus Quest 2, you were required to have a Facebook account. That got some big backlash, and they made it where you only needed a Meta account, so you didn't need a Facebook one. But this is a big notice to make sure you do swap and change over so you don't lose your, all the content that you've been getting over the years. And a big deal about Meta that really I think is going to upset some people. The report came out earlier today by 9to5 Google. Meta has reportedly rejected an Android XR partnership, Google, however, remaining open to the idea. According to the information, quote, Google suggested that Meta partner on Android XR, unquote, in a meeting late last year between the two companies. It would have resulted in Meta contributing to Android XR, which seems to be this new strategy, new platform that Google's trying to put forward to have more Android-based virtual reality headsets. It would still run off of Android, but it would be more fine-tuned for VR purposes. A new form factor, in a way, for Android to run in the virtual reality or mixed reality or immersive reality or whatever reality, augmented reality, all the realities by Google. The information reports that, quote, Meta executives decided against the partnership, unquote, but, quote, Google made it clear that the door remained open, unquote. So this report reveals that Meta did consider this sort of partnership with Google in the past, including using the Play Store, but it wasn't seriously pursued because Meta wanted to retain the Quest Store. So I guess part of the idea is there probably can't be a different app store on the headset besides the one Google provides, the Play Store. So Meta has long requested more Google apps on its platform beyond just YouTube. This partnership would have resulted in that. But alas, c'est la vie, it didn't happen. A shame, because getting sideloading apps onto the Meta Quest 3, in my case, and of course the Meta Quest 2 before it, have been oddly not as easy. You have to connect it to a computer and whatnot and transfer over the apps. You can't really install anything, at least not easily, through the headset itself. It's very annoying. It's possible, but of course anything involving Google services is not possible because there's more integration that has to happen to run Google Play services, so you can have other apps like the Google app, I think. Or I've tried to install Google Chrome before, but it's, fine-tuned for touchscreens. There's not really a VR version of it. Not a big deal. There's some solid web browsers on the MetaQuest headset, including Wolvik, which I recommend people try out. It used to be the Firefox VR headset app. But this is a bit of a shame, Wish there would be more of a partnership, but of course, Meta really led the way with standalone headsets running off of Android, the Oculus Go, then the Oculus Quest, and then the Quest 2, and the rest was history. So it does feel like Google is the one that's really trying to step in, and Meta is kind of like the leader, right? Very unfortunate. I would love for a sort of partnership like this one. It would just benefit everyone, but I can see why Meta is against the idea. Maybe with this report coming out, things could change. Maybe some backlash could exist, but it does look like Google is the one that's in the minority. So that's the main subject. That's the beef and potatoes of the podcast. But of course, I always wanted to end it off with some ambitious topic, a very ambitious one. And I'm just going to be a little brief with it, but it seems to be very interesting. An article on the RMIT University website suggests an article titled, "A Promising Leap Towards Computers with Lightspeed Capabilities." So apparently, scientists have been able to make a reprogrammable light-based processor, a world first, that could improve capability with quantum computing and communication. It's light-based, so there's literally a quote that says, "If you lose light, you have to restart the computation," which is very, very interesting. A reprogrammable light-based processor, very technical know-how, but they've reprogrammed a photonics processor in the range of experiments. And yeah, it's, quantum computing is involved to a degree. Very, very technical know-how. Overall, this is a very ambitious system, utilizing light to improve performance and to run computers, is definitely out there. Startup companies in quantum computing could be created around this team's photonic device design and quantum control method, which they would continue to study in terms of applications and their, quote, full potential. So it's not fully known how far this sort of device can go, but if it associates with quantum computing, which seems to be the next big thing, as devices made by Google and IBM continue to increase their capability with their quantum computing with qubits or whatnot, that's a massive amount of mumbo-jumbo and technical know-how that you need. But maybe one day you won't have to need it. There's a quote, "Imagine a world where computers work millions of times faster than they do today, where we can send information securely without any fear of it being intercepted, and where we can solve problems in seconds that would currently take years. This isn't just fantasy, it's the potential future powered by quantum technologies, and research like ours is paving the way." All right, unquote. All right, I'm excited. I hope it succeeds in my lifetime. Will it happen? Well, that's the beauty of futurology. We don't know. Wish we did, but at least there's that ambition. Someone's going to have it. And that'll be it for me this episode. Thank you all for tuning in for episode 30. Not a whole lot of extraordinary with entertainment. I know a lot of awards were given out in recent days. Congrats to Oppenheimer and other films. I know Dune Part 2 is coming soon, if not already, in some theaters. And I do plan to check out that film in the near future. And if I do, I will definitely give a review on it, possibly even on thefreshwire.com, where you can check out a recap and archive of every episode that I've been releasing since episode numero 1. And that's where I'll be posting each episode along with wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I really do appreciate everyone that tunes in. That's going to be it for me. Thank you all for listening. Take care of yourselves and have a gosh darn good one. See you around. Peace.